Hello, hello, everyone. Welcome back to Paranormal Connections radio show. I know you're saying, where do you keep going? You know, one minute you're here, the next minute you're not. And I kind of have to explain because a lot of people do not realize that I live with a very rare chronic autoimmune illness, and there is no cure for it. And people always tell me, oh, you don't look sick. And thank God for that. And I feel like I've been battling this for a very long time, and I'm glad that it doesn't show externally. The version I have of the illness is an internal version. So it basically causes connective tissue to wrap around all of my internal organs and so they basically don't work anymore. So if I get overstressed, anybody gets sick around me, anything that'll cause a flare, it starts tightening around everything, can't swallow anything, nothing can move through my system, the kidneys, start having issues, run into a lot of problems. So, it's not that I am not serious about the show. It's not that I'm not serious about wanting to help to support my friends that are doing events. If anybody knows anybody with chronic autoimmune illness, you really have no pre-warning. I can be fine right now, and in 4 hours, I could be so sick that I'm at the ER being admitted for a bowel obstruction. So it's kind of crazy how it all works, and I don't have a lot of control over it. So I made it to Arizona for the Vulture City Paracon out at Vulture City Ghost Town. Man, oh man, what an amazing time. But was so crazy there that I also got very sick and made it back, ended up basically passing out and ended up in the hospital for over a week. And I've still been struggling. I'm feeling a little better now, but just so much going on. So I am back. Everybody has been asking me for a long time. Everybody knows that I have two shows. So I have this show on Tuesdays now, and then I have Top Secret News, which used to be Aliens, UFOs, and Beyond on Thursday nights. And so I usually keep paranormal, some cryptozoology stuff on Paranormal Connections. And on Top Secret News, I do all the uh, abductions, UFO sightings, things like that, even crypto on that side. But a lot of the people from Paranormal Connections, even though they watch the other ones, are really interested in that stuff. And so they are always wanting me to do shows that kind of brings to light some of the interesting things that I've found investigating the paranormal over the years, as well as ufology. And that's kind of what brought together my show. The name of my show was Paranormal Connections. So I want to put the information out. People have been asking me for a while. Somebody caught one of the shows that I did on abductions and hybridization. And I had a experiencer, an abductee, that was used in a hybrid program. And it really resonated with me. And I just felt like I had to tell her story. And she wasn't looking for anything. She just wanted to come and tell her story because she felt so blessed to find somebody who would listen and that didn't think she was crazy and 100% believed what she was saying. The other thing that I noticed is that all of the research I've done in paranormal as well as ufology, I was starting to see a lot of reportings of similar experiences. Many people in the paranormal know that lots of us, especially people with psychic abilities, we tend to, how do I want to put this? Have a lot of sleep paralysis. I know I've suffered from it since the teenage years. Uh, Always thought it was something just paranormal because that's all I was around. And now talking to so many abductees, contactees, different things, I started noticing that they were experiencing the same thing. A lot of us had missing time. But the hybridization part of this, of abductions, was a whole nother level. It went from people seeing UFOs and I'm going checking out their videos and going and doing sky watches out at the locations to see if we could capture anything, to people then starting word of mouth contacting me and wanting to talk about their abductions or their contact. Some very, very interesting stories from some very, very credible people. And it was at that point that things started making sense. They started connecting. And those shows, whether it's paranormal or abducted or experiencers, any of those people that come on and they share their personal experiences, those always seem to be really good shows. And when I started this show, that was the whole point, is I wanted to get people's stories out on a larger platform. As many people know, I used to be out there at all of the paranormal events as a speaker. But your little rebel here, Christina, yeah, I cuss like a sailor. I don't take shit from anybody. And I definitely don't kiss ass. So I'm pretty blunt. I don't really have a filter. And so I've offended a few people by being truthful to them. And so they tried to blacklist me. And so I felt like, oh, okay, well, blacklist me. I can go to a event that might have maybe at the most a couple hundred people. And I might have a quarter of those in the lecture. Or I could take a platform to radio and I could get out to what I thought maybe hundreds of people. And then after a year or so, then it was thousands of people and tens of thousands. And then by like the third year, I was in the 100,000s, and I never, ever thought I was going to make it that far. And now, I'm in the 750,000 range, and it's been a very, very interesting ride. So I'm so excited to bring my guests on tonight. I had them on probably, I was talking off air, but I think it was probably around 5 or 6 years ago. And they are both filmmakers, and it was very interesting. They came on and they were talking about a new documentary that they had put out. It was, and guests were John Semple and Jack Roth, and they were both of J3 Films. And we were discussing the Stan Romanek case. And so it was something that was a very hot topic at the time. It was a very interesting show, very popular show. And they did a documentary on it. It did very, very well. So I was recently contacted by John, and he remembered being on the show all those years ago, and said, hey, we have a new show, a new film that just came out, and it's discussing, abduction and the hybridizations and things. And they sent me the preview, and wow, it was very, very interesting. And I definitely, when they said, well, you check it out, if you want to have us on the show, let us know. And so I watched it and I was excited. And then they sent me the preview of the movie, and I checked it out. And man, now I understand why this film's already won like numerous awards, including they got the best documentary, the People's Choice Awards at the International UFO Congress last month. So it's something that has been very welcomed, and I'm so happy that they actually did a documentary on this topic, because it is very hard. Most of the people in the paranormal know it's very hard to come out with your story and have people that you had to hide it from for so long not believe, or maybe not believe you. And now we're talking about abduction, and that takes it a step further. Even though there's been movies about it, it's not the same as the paranormal. You have all these paranormal investigating, shows and things like that. So it's a little bit different. And they both do exactly what I want. They brought the all of the people on the film and the documentary to the forefront to talk about their experiences. And boy, oh boy, are they interesting. So I'm happy that I could bring both of them back. So I'm going to bring them back to the show real quick. Hold on. Hey guys, welcome back.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Man, it seems like I feel like I'm getting old. I didn't even realize that, I've been doing the show for that long. I think I've been like doing it 9 years now. And it's just like, wow, you guys were kind of at the front end of it. And what an amazing documentary that one was, that when we covered that. And it was a very popular show that, that got ratings afterwards. People were very interested in the topic and the story behind the man, and did very, very well. And now you guys have taken it even one step further, where now you're talking about, more experiencers, but now we're talking about a lot of the hybridization that some of these experiencers and abductees are having to go through. And what took you from, the one documentary to the other? Because that's a pretty big jump, but I love that you stayed with the whole, let's tell the experiencer's story.
Right. Well, it was a progression is what it was. And I think one of the things we learned from doing the Stan Romanek documentary was that, we learned a lot doing it. It was an incredible journey for us, a learning experience and journey. But what we came away with is, okay, well, it seemed to us, I remember John and I sitting down and we were like, these kids, like it seemed like the end result of Stan's experiences and the reason why he was having these experiences was these children, these hybrid children that were showing up in his life. And that just fascinated me. I was blown away by that. And I said, John, I think it's really this is the why of this is the kids. The reason people are being abducted seems to lead to the fact that there's some kind of a hybridization program or project, or that could be multiple ones. But that's what we knew we had to kind of go further. We wanted to dig more, and we wanted to kind of take people on this journey from one guy seeing things in the sky and then leading to abductions, leading to hybridization. And we kind of left it with the introduction of hybridization. And then we just wanted to, in the second film, we just wanted to take it further. And that's kind of how we decided, let's do a trilogy. And that's why this is called Extraordinary 2, The Seeding. And then we actually have a third film that we already shot and we're in post-production on. That's EX3. It doesn't have a title yet, but it takes it even further than that. So to answer your question, yeah, it was a progression for us and for the viewers.
And let me add to that too, is that one of the big things that we received as a result of the first film coming out was a lot of response from individuals who were reaching out saying, thank you so much for sharing this story with me, because I thought I was crazy, and now I know I'm not the only one having these experiences. So we received over 700 different emails and text messages and direct messages on Facebook with people basically saying thank you for telling in so many words my story too. I realize I'm not crazy. I realize I'm not alone. So as we started going through the process of interviewing the people for this film, screening them first and then doing the on-screen interviews, on-camera interviews, we realized even more that there were people that were going through something that the non-experiencer might not understand, but needs to hear about and needs to better understand that just because you haven't been through it doesn't mean that somebody else hasn't. And we wanted to drive home that point that for people who have had the experiences, they need to realize that they're not alone. They need to realize that there is a community out there of people that they can talk with. And for those of us who may not have had an experience, we need to be listening, and we need to be more compassionate and understanding for people who've been through something that we can't quite understand.
Well, absolutely. I mean, it's very hard for people to really understand until they have a personal experience, and then it changes their life forever, you know.
Sure.
And so it's hard. That's why people always say to me, well, how do you prove to people that you're a psychic, or that you know, do these kinds of things, and how do you prove the paranormal? And I always say, that's not what I'm here for. I'm not here to prove anything to anybody. I'm here for a message. This is what I do. And, you know, the people who are in tune and understand, that's who's going to listen. But I'm surprised every once in a while I do a show and I get a new viewer, and all of a sudden something clicks, something happens, and all of a sudden they're starting to now rethink, and maybe I don't have it all 100% right. And so I love what you guys are doing, and I can't wait until I get to find out what the third in the trilogy is going to be about, because that's absolutely amazing.
We'd be happy to tell you.
Yeah,
If you're
absolutely.
interested.
100%.
No, the third, where the second film, you know, as Jack said, this was kind of like going a little bit deeper than where we left off in the first film. And our intention wasn't to, you know, make a trilogy when we made the first film. What we realized is that there was an opportunity to continue the story, which is why we wanted to, you know, do something that went a little bit deeper. And our intent from the very beginning was to reach the widest audience possible, which basically means we wanted to reach the center of the bell curve, not the fringes. Because if you don't believe, it's going to be hard to convince you. And if you already believe, you're already there. We don't need to pose anything to you for you to ponder. So our intention with this film was to make sure that we provided information to people who might not know where they stand on an issue, or they're leaning one way or the other, and they're just looking for some more information to support it. And also for people who may have never heard it, when they find this and see it, whether they see a trailer or they see the film, they realize, wow, this is profound. I didn't realize this was happening to so many people. So we wanted to, you know, kind of go deeper into the emotional story in the second film so that people can better understand what's happening to the individuals who've had these experiences. The third film, we want to kind of take you a little bit even deeper into the story and provide a little bit more insight, again, targeting the middle of the road, as opposed to people who already believe, and present stories that will help them and help them understand better and encourage them to do additional research. So like you, we're not trying to solve anything. We're not trying to say this is the definitive answer one way or another. We're just trying to present information based on cumulative evidence of experiencers who've had these different things happen to them. So in the third film, we're going to do a little bit of a historical perspective to let people know this didn't just start in 1947. This goes back hundreds of years, if not thousands of years, if not millennia, if not even further back than that. Who knows when it started? Maybe it all started with the Big Bang. But excuse me, from the historical perspective, we're going to lead into a conversation about three different belief paradigms. The first one being the biblical paradigm. There's a group of people, a large group of people, who believe that the Bible is 100% right 100% of the time, and the narrative is basically leading us to the second coming of Jesus. There's also the love and light, the ascension crowd, who believes that this is a positive event. It's a raising of a vibration. It's taking humanity to another level, and that we're in that time where we're approaching this event that will help elevate all of us, which has a very positive outcome and is something that a lot of people embrace because they're positive in the way that they look at life, and this is something that feeds into that. Then there's the third scenario, which is the colonization, which basically means we're being replaced. So these are three very, very different paradigms. All of them believe in abductions. All of them believe in reproduction experiments and hybridization programs, and all of them believe in hybridization or hybrid children. But their end games are very, very different. So we want to pose questions and present information that will encourage people who have never heard of any of this before to think about it a little bit deeper, and for those who may believe in one of those three paradigms to consider the other ones as well. And a big part of the film will be to include validation and discussions with whistleblowers who can say that, yes, the government's been involved in this, therefore we can definitively say through our experience that this is happening and that this is real. So when you get the kind of like that final, pounding of the nail, into the conversation, you realize that there are people out there who can vouch for it, that the government is involved, global governments, not just the U.S. military,
Right.
but there's involvement. And if there's involvement at that level, one of these paradigms and one of these belief systems and these experiences that people have been having are likely to be true. So if they are true, we ask the one simple question in all three of these films is, what if it is true? What does that mean? What does that mean to humanity? What does that mean to us as individuals? What does that mean to the evolution of where we are today and where we're going? So those are things that we can get into a huge metaphysical conversation whenever we go down this path. And it's something that we definitely think we should consider, and encourage people to have those conversations.
Well, I guess I want to start at the beginning, because I know even in the paranormal, as well as I do a lot of research in abductees and contactees. So I get a lot of emails, okay, with people wanting to tell their story, not per se to get on the show, but just through word of mouth and people in different UFO groups, support groups, they've sent them my way. Some are very credible from some very credible people. A lot of, again, people from the military, the government, high-ranking people who we know even had to, coming out, especially as a whistleblower, before was very dangerous, but it's even more dangerous now, because over the years, the government has made it very, very clear they're not going to go for that. And yet there's still so many people out there that say, screw, like, this needs to be known, like the public need to know what we're dealing with, and how were you able of getting, 700 stories to pick the select few that are in the documentary? Because obviously you could have a show that could go for 12 hours if you did stories
Easy.
on everybody. So how did you guys choose who you were going to use?
That was a big part of the pre-production process, was vetting all these people. And we were lucky in that we, John and I have our connections in the field, but we also had two of our producers, Lori Wagner and Chase Klotsky, are incredibly connected, and they have great reputation. So everyone likes them, and they were willing to say, okay, yeah, we'll talk to Jack and John, and I'll tell them the story. I'll tell them my story. So we were able to talk to dozens and dozens of people on the phone for hours, literally each person at least an hour at the very least, to sit and hear them tell their story. And I think one of the things that really, I would say, surprised us, but it was the genuine nature of the way they, there were a couple things that we wanted to make sure of. And there were a couple of things that we thought would be red flags. One is when we wanted to get people who were hadn't told their story all that much. Right. And what happens if you're telling your story for 20 years, it kind of becomes such a, you tell it and there's no emotion to it anymore. And it's kind of your brand. It's kind of your thing. And, you're telling your story. Nothing against people that had abductions in the 60s and have been telling the story since the 60s.
Right.
That doesn't mean it didn't happen, but we really wanted to get that raw, emotional kind of, I'm still dealing with this. I don't know how to deal with this. Right. And that was one of the big things for us. Another thing, as obvious thing was, if they asked for money up front, they were like, well, how much money am I going to make? And it's like, well, we're not doing this for that reason. Right. That's really not what this is all about. So, but to be honest with you, most people, and a very, very high percentage of people, were sincere. They had true raw emotion in the telling of their stories, and they were truly, they were affected in a very profound way by the things that had happened to them. So then it became the kind of thing. But what really wound up happening with a lot of people is that they had great stories. We had great conversations with them, but then they were like, in the end, I can't go on camera and tell this story for various reasons, whether it's because of career, personal life. The one I always refer to as the woman who actually wound up in the movie, but she was blacked out. And we modulated her voice a little bit. It was almost like she was a witness protection person, because she came from such a small town in Missouri, and it was a very tight knit, kind of religious, very old school kind of community, conservative. And she just could. I said, I want to tell this story because I want to help other experiencers, but I can't show my face. So, but her story was so compelling that we're like, you know what, we'll do that. We'll put you on, but we'll black you out. We'll silhouette you. No one will see you. So a lot of people had to backed out because they just, in the end, they couldn't do it. And I think, John, that, and you can add to that, but I think that was really the process was just really talking to these people and getting to know them and seeing what it was all about.
And most of the people that wound up in the film, we spoke to on phone calls on more than one occasion. So there was the initial screening to better understand their story and to really find out, were they able to tell their story in a compelling way, and were they comfortable telling it? That's a big part of it. All of a sudden, you're having a phone conversation one day, and the next day there's a crew of people with lights and a camera, and people standing around while you're talking about it. And we needed to establish there would be a comfort level with doing that. So we asked everybody multiple times, are you sure you want to do this? Are you sure you're going to be comfortable? Are you sure you're going to be okay with, when this is released, that it's going to be available to anybody and everybody in the world who wants to watch it? Are you okay with presenting yourself in that manner? And every single one of them felt compelled that I need to do this because it's going to help other people. And that's one of the things that we think is very important about this, is that the people that are involved in this aren't doing it for, like Jack said, for the payday. This isn't part of the conversation. And every single one of the people that were experiencers in this film never asked for a penny. So that was very important to us, because we knew that they were coming from a place of genuine concern, and that they felt, every single one of them felt, that if somebody hears my story and I know that I can help them either make better sense of what has happened to them, or encourage them to reach out to somebody that will listen to them, whether it's a community of people, of experiencers, or even a family member for the first time talking about it. It's very important for people who are holding something like this in to share it and relieve the burden, relieve the fear, and the fear is not necessarily just the experience, but also how I'm going to be judged. Will I be ridiculed? Those are the big things that people go through, is that, they risk sharing their story and being ridiculed, and then they go through a second round of trauma that is either sometimes more debilitating than the experience itself. So that it was important for us to kind of get people who were willing to share their stories in a way that would help other people, on their own personal journeys. And it was a long process of getting to the point where, we had these conversations and we asked questions on numerous occasions. And one of the things, when someone is coming from a point of truth, their story doesn't change. There's no wavering in the storytelling. So when you hear somebody tell a story 4 or 5 or 6 times and nothing changes with it, they're usually talking from experience, because they remember it in detail. But when you have people that are telling a story and you sense that there's some wandering going on in the story, or some embellishment or exaggeration or components of it that weren't there the last time you talked with them, then you have to be a little bit concerned about, is this story 100% accurate based on what they're sharing? So are all of the stories 100% accurate? We don't know. And I would say that most of the people who've had the experiences don't know either. But what they can say is that I know that something happened to me. I can't explain it. I know it sounds crazy. I know I sound like a lunatic when I share my story with people who don't understand it, but it's my personal story. And you mentioned it earlier, and it's a line in the film: unless it's happened to you, it's just a story. So what we want to do is get people in a position where, when they hear the stories, they start to realize that these stories are being told over and over by tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of people, with very similar components to their story. So there's a lot of corroboration with the storytelling that different women from all over the world have been sharing about their abduction experiences.
Now, did you find that there were more women than men that were submitting their stories, or that were more open to coming forward and being on camera?
Go ahead. You were going to go, Jack.
Well, no, I was just going to say, it wasn't so much, well, the idea of unexplained pregnancies was something that was originally John and I had talked about, because we were approached. One of the people in the film, Sierra Neblina, we actually met when we were shooting the Stan Romanek documentary, and so we heard her story way back then, and it blew us away. I mean, we sat there with her and we're like,
Yeah.
Jaws dropped.
Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
Here's someone who is a lifelong lesbian, has never been with a man ever, and boom, was pregnant, and she had a girlfriend, and she had explained that to her, and you know how it's very difficult in so many ways. So the idea of the false pregnancy was something that was a big deal for John and I, because it was such a fascinating thing. So we approached it. It was more female centric from that standpoint of what these women were going through with the false pregnancies.
Right.
Now, however, as we all know, men and women are both abducted. We can all be abducted, right? So there's men who have been abducted, and they're part of the hybridization process. Right. So even though the women, there's nothing stronger than a maternal bond with their child that's in the body, and then all of a sudden is not there anymore. And then maybe 7 years later, they're introduced to their hybrid child. I mean, to a woman, this maternal emotional impact of that and bond is something that's probably one of the strongest things that you can ever, talk about as far as human beings are concerned. But however, what we did learn is that men were coming forward saying, look, I was part of the hybridization project. I was abducted. They used my sperm. They did things to me. And the next thing I knew, I had these hybrid children as well. Yeah. And, and as human nature, man or woman, there's that instinct of the paternal instinct of, my gosh, so the men, there was an emotional impact there as well. So what we tried to do, most of the film focuses on false pregnancies and the experiences that females have had. But one of our two of the three main people that we introduce in this film are women, but one is a male. One's a man, and he had an incredible experience in his own right. So, yeah, that's kind of how that worked itself out. But John, I don't know if there were more. There probably were more females.
There were more females for sure. And in all honesty, too, is that we did have a handful of men that we were speaking with, because we wanted to have a little bit more balance in the film. And the half dozen or so that we spoke to, all of them eventually disqualified themselves, not because they didn't want to be, or not because they said something that disqualified them, but they ultimately decided that they didn't want to put themselves in the position of being, I would say, for the most part, ridiculed. There was one that we were really close to having, and it became more of a travel issue. He was older, and there was a lot of accommodations that need to be met, and he just, at the end of the day, felt like it was too much for him to do the travel that was required for us to interview him. So that was, we wanted to have more of that perspective, but we also, through the discussions that we had, is that, the men can only go to a certain point in that conversation, is the extraction of semen. Right. And then they're, I'm not making light of it, but then their work is kind of done until they're introduced to the child. The women go through a much more of an emotional process. Not to disqualify that, having semen extracted from a man is not an emotional process. And of the people that we've spoke to, and of the people that we've researched, going into that, it's a debilitating thing. Yeah. And it's humiliating, and there's the male ego that's involved. It's a whole nother part of the equation where, it's like I've been raped, and I've been taken advantage of, and right. I just don't feel comfortable talking about that. So there was a vulnerability there that was necessary in order for the men to be willing to step forward and have that conversation. But what we found in talking with the different women that we spoke with, they didn't hesitate. It was more a matter of, I have no problem talking about what happened to me. I just have to have, make the decision on whether or not I'm comfortable enough to state it to, for all the world to see. But every single one of the women that are in the film, and every single one of the women that we did screen, were completely comfortable sharing their story with us. And it came down to whether or not they were comfortable sharing the story to the masses. But it was a challenging process to find the right people. It was We did have a desire to have more. One of the reasons why more men, and one of the reasons why we opted to use Rob, one, because the story is very compelling, and two, is it's also an alternative to the conventional conception that we're used to, male and female union, child it's born. Rob's whole abduction experience and hybridization program is through shared consciousness, which is a whole nother conversation, a
Right.
completely different dynamic. And granted, we only had an hour and 45-minute movie to introduce what happened to him, and he's featured in the film for probably 15 minutes cumulatively. But his story is fascinating, and we're going to be launching a Patreon account within the next month or two, and we're going to be providing all of the raw footage for each one of the interviews that we did, so that people can hear them in depth and have a better understanding what each one of the individual stories were.
That's awesome. That's kind of something that I find as well, which is that's why I was asking you, because I do get a lot of men who have come and they've told me about their part in the hybridization program, and as well as meeting up with the children after. But most of them were either the breadwinners, or they were a lot older, and they just didn't want their name out there. It's still very taboo. They had too much to lose. And, a lot of people say, oh, what's going to hurt? Like, if that's your story, that's your story. But people have no idea how negatively affected you can become by putting a story of an abduction, much less, having a, hybrid child. And I have seen people it used against them in divorces, and they've lost their children. I've seen people lose their jobs. I've seen people who didn't like the stories that they're putting out there, didn't believe it, became haters and did everything to ruin their credibility and well-being, to the point where I've even known some people, because of not being believed and ridiculed and losing everything, all to try to just find some kind of answers. Everybody that goes through it, whether it's the paranormal or whether you're abducted, you're looking for your own answers. It's what gets so many of us researchers in the field, is because we're looking for ourselves, and we learn so much along the way that we want to try to help others who are newly going through this, which is why the support groups are so big now. And again, how can you have this many people just making all this up? Because a lot of the stories, and you can tell me, because you had to vet all these people, did you find that there was a lot of similarities? I know that no one story is a cookie cutter abduction, or that same thing with the paranormal. Everything is different, but a lot of times you'll find a lot of similarities in different aspects. Was that something as well that you found?
Jack, before you jump into that, because I know you're going to take that one, you brought up a good point though, Christina, about the trusting it, whether or not the stories is going to be presented in a way. So one of the big risks that any experiencer takes when they share their story, whether it's in a newspaper article, a magazine feature, a short video, an interview, anytime that their story is presented, there's a chance that whoever captured their story to present it in an alternative format is going to tell it in a way that makes them look bad. And that's one of the things that we had to do. We had to go through this process of not really convincing people, but making them feel comfortable that we had their best interests in mind, that we were not going to take their story and bastardize it. We were not going to use their story against them. That, our objective was to serve them and serve their story. That was very, very important to us, that they understood that we were going to treat them in a very positive way, and that we were going to have their best interests in mind. So that's a big part of the process for anybody that's going through this. And as you mentioned, there have been people who feel like they've been taken advantage of before when they go to share their story, and they just don't want to run the risk. One of the women that we vetted, hers was one of the best stories that we had, but we couldn't use her because she said, if I were to go on camera, and I badly want to go on camera, I would likely get divorced and I would lose my children. I can't risk that. So, there are a lot of people out there who have the career at stake, the family at stake, and, the the humiliation that goes along with the public ridicule for having something like this. But as far as the similarities, Jack can definitely. I mean, we're used to doing these shows, and this is one of his questions to answer.
right.
So I'll let him.
We're usually
run
pretty good at knowing who's going to answer what, but well, we get excited. We're very emotional, and we get excited about this because it's very meaningful to us, the work we're doing. But as far as well, you can go back to what I would call the pioneers of abduction research. When you mention names like Bud Hopkins and John Mack, and they not only interviewed thousands of people. David Jacobs, the same thing, that they were been doing this for decades. And they all said in their books at one point or another, they said, that you have all these people telling these stories, and they're all so similar. What you come to the conclusion is that they're having the same experiences. Now, there's details. The way someone describes an ET medical instrument from one person to the other might be a little different. And we also have to consider the fact that there's more than one ET race doing these programs. So when someone says, well, I saw a cigar-shaped craft, well, I saw a rectangular-shaped craft, or I saw a disc-shaped craft. Well, okay, that's like seeing a different kind of boat or a different kind of car. I mean, there are different craft. So, and also the description of the ETs themselves. But we found the same thing when we were talking to all these people. It was always this, the thread was the basic abduction scenario is they get taken somehow. And it's either they get taken from their bedrooms in the middle of the night. Sometimes they're in their cars, and the next thing, there's missing time. Either it's 3 hours later and they're in their car parked on the side of a road, or they wake up the next morning and they're in bed. They remember somehow, if the memory is there right away, being taken. Sometimes they go right out the bedroom window, and there's some kind of how are they getting out? Or their bodies are going right out of a wall, a solid wall, but somehow they're getting on these craft. And when they're taken to the craft, there's some kind of a medical experiment there is being conducted. They're being studied. And a lot of times they'll take skin samples. They're taking they'll take hair, skin, saliva, blood. I mean, it's DNA. They're getting DNA samples, and then they're doing experiments on their private sexual organs in one way or the other, male, female. They're doing these things. A lot of times, it's communication through telepathy.
Right.
Which is very interesting. They're not actually talking, but they're doing it telepathically. They're trying to calm the people down. There's always and they're able to do it. It's almost like you're going to be calm now, and all of a sudden the person just relaxes and gets very calm. So there's some kind of a mind control thing going on. And then also the ETs themselves. We do talk about the grays. That's why Whitley Strieber, the cover of his books, is this gray alien. I mean, seems to be what people see, and they talk about the grays, some taller, some shorter, but they also talk about, and this is really interesting, but they talk about other ET species usually in the background. So they'll say, there were these tall, Nordic, very attractive looking people in the background that seem to be ordering these grays around, that telling them what to do. Or reptilians, same thing, ordering them. Or insectoid, praying mantis. And at first I'm like, praying mantis, that's, wow, that's a stretch. But think about what ETs in the universe could look like anything. And then what's really interesting, I think, and John and I, again, we've talked about this at length so many times, but the fact that they're abducted, they're taken back, they have screen memories, so they don't remember everything right away. Very few people do. And then memories start to come back, and then something might trigger it. And then they go and sometimes they get regression therapy, and that a lot comes back, right? So then and it helps them to deal with it. But it happens more than once with people. You're usually, for the very high percentage of people who are abducted, they're not abducted once.
Right.
And reason for that. And a lot of times, and a couple other things, and I mentioned this because it's very interesting, there is a there's a generational factor, wherein a parent or grandparent was also abducted. So there's a DNA component there. And also there's a lot of times a military component where, okay, I'm in the military, male or female, I'm being abducted. My dad was in the military. Oh, and by the way, my grandfather had a top secret clearance. And, this will come out of it. And John and I are like, oh, okay, there you go. And it's really interesting when you're like, there's a pattern developing here. There's a real strong pattern. And that's the kind of thing that Bud Hopkins and John Mack talked about. It's like, guys, there's a real strong pattern here. It's not just random. Okay. There is something specific going on with these people. And so, yes, Christina, that's a great question, because there is this thread that you see goes through. And again, the final part of the piece of that puzzle, of that thread, is that eventually, years later, they're abducted again, and they're introduced somehow to these children, these hybrid looking children, half, really big eyes, stringy red, blondish hair, really small features. And these, here are these beautiful children, and they know, the moms especially know right away, that's my child. That is my child. And the emotion that comes with that is so visceral that it's unbelievable. And it affected us just interviewing these people, when you see someone telling that story and just crying and feeling that emotion. But the same for the men. So eventually they're, in many cases, shown their children, and they're told, love them, nurture them.
Right. Because they can't. That's the one thing. They don't have any emotional connection. So they need us to be able to go and help to give them that human component, because they are part human.
Right.
And so we're the only ones that can give them, that love. Yeah.
So that's the process. And when you're talking to hundreds and thousands of people that are all talking about this happening to them, John, right? I mean, it becomes the kind of thing that's, okay, well, objectively speaking, you can say objectively that, okay, yeah, there seems to be something that's happening here that's real, and it's happening to people, and it's pretty much the same thing that's happening. So yeah, I can objectively sit back and intelligently say, yes, there's some kind of a hybridization program occurring where people are being abducted by ETs, interdimensional, interplanetary. We don't know whether the government's involved. We don't really know. Obviously, we don't know much, but we can see the patterns, and that's what's important. And by the way, John, this is something that when John spoke to David Jacobs, who's been doing this forever, John, tell him what he said, because he's like, I'm sick and tired of people saying there's no evidence. Say that, because that's a great point.
Yeah, because when talking with him, he said that's one of the things that the feedback that we've gotten in the films that we've done, the two films in particular, is especially from the people who are more scientific minded and they need tangible proof. They say that there's no evidence. And when I shared that with Dr. Jacobs, he got mad, and he said, "I'm sick and tired," and used a few choice words, of people who say that, because he says, and he pointed upstairs in his house to 3,500 different interviews that he's done over the years. And he said, there's a lot of corroborative evidence. And when we have, me doing what I've done, but Hopkins doing what he's done, dozens of other long-term investigators who have done very similar work, having all this, evidence is something that we need to start looking at and saying that people's individual narrative stories are something that we should be looking at collectively as something that points us in the direction of what may be happening. One of the things that I think it's important to talk about too is that when we've shown this film at festivals, and we've also had conversations with individuals who have seen it, specifically at the festival that when we screened in Pasadena in March of this year, we had probably about 85, well, no, it was about 125 people in the room, maybe more. Actually, it was more. It was over 150, because that was a capacity thing that we pushed through that 150 barrier and moved into a bigger theater. So more than 150 people in the theater. And after the film was over, about a half a dozen different women came up and said that they were triggered by something in the film, that when they saw it, it made them realize something that happened to them might be an event that they never really thought of as being potentially connected to an abduction experience. And these were to the point where they were in tears while they were watching the film. We also talked with a podcaster that we did a show with, and she said that, I have to tell you guys, I just watched the film 2 days ago, and I was just blown away. So much so that I need time to process the triggering events that I went through as a result of seeing the film. And I'll have to get back to you guys with what I'm able to unpack all of this and figure out what it was that made me feel so emotional as a result of seeing this. So we've talked with many people who have seen the film since it came out in September, that they too have had a connection to a certain person's story. And I can't tell you how many times we've heard from people. It's like, when I heard so-and-so say this, it just triggered something. I mean, this one woman told me, it's like, I have no idea why, but when I heard so-and-so talk about her story, and it wasn't even the abduction part of it, it was the emotions that she felt. It made me realize that I had a similar reaction to something once, and now I'm beginning to question what my reaction was to. So those are the type of things that sometimes it lies in our subconscious because we're not willing to move it, bring it forward. And when we do bring it forward, it becomes a conscious reality. And once that conscious reality is present, people start unpacking it and exploring it and asking more questions. And when they ask more questions, they get answers. And when they get more answers, there's more questions that follow. So I think it's important for people to understand that, it may be one little thing that when you finally ask that question of yourself or are exposed to it, that it can. I saw one of the comments fly by here with somebody who said that they had a revelation.
Yeah.
And that's what kind of triggered me to say that.
Yeah.
And to Joe Stewart, it's not available on DVD, unfortunately. You're a dinosaur. I'm going to say that because not too many people watch DVDs anymore. And our distributor basically told us, no, we don't think that would be a smart financial decision for us to go down that path. From the distributor's point of view, it's all about dollars and cents, and they want to make sure money is being spent in the promotion of the film wisely. So that we were encouraged not to do it a DVD. And I was kind of surprised that we've only had about a half a dozen requests for DVDs. Joe, I'll add you to the list of people who've requested that, but it hasn't been a huge request for DVDs. So, if there is at some point some outpouring for requesting that, we may address that on a one-off basis.
Well, I'm loving this. William Bennett, and welcome, William, to the show. He says, I see myself as a skeptic, and while I don't see any tangible evidence to abductions, I cannot dismiss the overwhelming amount of people who come forward. I cannot deny something is going on. That's why I'm so interested in the subject and willing to listen. And I think that's what we're trying to get, right? That's what we're trying to accomplish.
Exactly. And he has a great attitude, William, I would say, because, right. I mean, if it doesn't happen to you, it's I need to I'm the same way. I think, right. We're all like, we approach it really from a journalistic standpoint. It's like, where's the evidence? Where's the tangible evidence? But also we're putting on the filmmaker shoes. So as filmmakers making a documentary, we're telling a story about humanity. We're telling a human story that people, this is part of the human condition. So what we're doing is we're being objective. We're throwing it all out there. We're not trying to convince people one way or the other, but it's so important for all of us, for all of humanity, to say, look, there are things we cannot explain. And sometimes things can't be explained with current mathematics or current science. And what I mean by that current is that things are constantly changing. Quantum physics is changing physics.
Right.
I mean, John makes a great point about go back 400 years. Go back to Galileo, go back to that, where people were being burned at the stake for suggesting that the earth was not the center of the universe. It's so absurd to think that we're not going to learn so much more in the coming years. Right, John? I mean, it's like,
black holes and stuff.
Yeah, and that's one of the themes in the film too, is the whole idea of expanding circles. There's a kind of a running theme with Ralph Waldo Emerson. We borrowed from his essay "Circles," which basically, in a nutshell, boils down to is that whenever we find the answers to things that we didn't know about, our circle of awareness and knowledge expands. But whenever that expansion occurs, it adds exponentially more questions that need to be answered. So whenever there is a breakthrough, whether that breakthrough is in science, if it's technology, if it's in spirituality, no matter what it is, if it is metaphysical breakthroughs, whatever that is, it takes us to a whole nother level of understanding of the human experience. And to think that we're done, that it's all done and there's nothing more to learn is preposterous. So William has a great attitude, is that, there's a lot of people we've talked to, and we're skeptical ourselves too. But we're willing to say, let's suspend that for a moment and pose that question: what if it's true? So if we look at everything from that filter, that if it's true, it means that we need to ask a whole bunch of questions. That means that there's a lot of things that what we believe in today will be altered tremendously as a result of that. We've had this conversation before, and anybody who's willing to go metaphysical on all of this is that it's not just the scientific part of it. It's not just finding out that the government's been lying to us. What if this does come out, and after we're all done with that outrage and pitchforks and torches, at the government for holding this back for so long, then you start to wonder, well, how is this happening, and how are they traveling? Is this something, we're used to straight lines. We're linear thinkers. To get from point A to point B is a straight line. Well, modern physics that we're taught is not necessarily the new physics that is being deciphered as we speak, and basically saying there's an opportunity to travel from point A to point Z by bending the points together. Instead of it being linear, you take the A over here and the Z over here, and you kind of wrap them around until they meet in the middle. And then boom, you can hop over. You can just jump right through the interdimensionally to these different existences. And then you start wondering, well, are we in a multiverse? Are we in a multiple existence on different planes? And what does that mean? Is our past really our present? Is our future really our past? Those are like mind-blowing to the linear thinking, humanity on the earth today. But it poses questions that we think are exciting to ponder, that we should be looking at these things and considering that, what does it mean to humanity if there is other life in the universe just like ours that is traveling interdimensionally, and we're not aware of it because we just haven't tuned into that. And when that circle expands to the point where we can embrace it, we will. There's another example we've shared before too, is that it's crazy, but back in the late 1890s, the U.S. Patent Office was considering disbanding because they believed at that time that everything that needed to be invented was invented.
Right.
That's just ludicrous. And for us to think that there's nothing new coming down the pike in the next 10, 15, 3 years, 3 years from now, if we have this conversation again, we may be having a completely different conversation, and that is due to a breakthrough that we didn't anticipate, or that has been in development for a long time but isn't ready to be processed yet. And then boom, it's presented, we process it, and it's accepted as something that we can relate to and understand and move forward with. And we've done that as humans for our entire existence, and it's only going to happen again and again and again.
Right. Well, no, I completely agree. I mean, I know how behind the scenes people think that if the government was to come out and say, okay, as it usually happens, like 15, 20, 25 years after they've been hiding something for a very long time, then it's finally, there's so much evidence out there that would say, like, look, it would take you to be just blind to not see that you've been lying. Then they'll come out and say, oh, okay, you caught us. All right, so this may exist, but they'll have some kind of twist on it. I really don't think that it would blow people's minds as much as they think. I think it would infuriate a lot of people because we have been taught to believe certain things to our core. And again, unless you have a personal experience, you really go by what you've been taught by people all your life. And so if you grow up in a home like I did, which was a very strict Catholic background, and to be talking about, I saw dead people and questioning the priest about, they asking about spirits and stuff. And they'd always say, oh, there's no such thing. And it'd say, the smart ass in me would say, oh, well, then why, when we're praying, do we say in the name of the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit, or the Holy Ghost? And they would get so mad. Sisters and nuns would get all mad. Stop doing that. Stop talking about that. Just listen to this. I always question. But again, as you start having personal experiences, although a lot of times I did think I was crazy, and I may be a little bit crazy, I knew what was going on was happening. You could not tell me it wasn't, because I tried everything under the sun to stop what was happening so I could just be like a normal kid, because it caused me not to have friends. I literally had to grow up and learn to be like a chameleon. You have to learn to live like a double life. And I don't think that people understand how difficult that is. That you have no support. There's nobody you can go to. You feel like you're the only person going through it, because again, you only have your personal experience, and everybody that you talk to don't have that experience. So they think you're crazy, making it up, go away from you. I have a lot of friends growing up, and even into adult, really, people didn't really know how to figure me out, what type of girl I was. So it is very hard to struggle with something like that. That's why I loved when I got into the paranormal, and then I started my own group, because we had a psychic paranormal research society, but we had two divisions. So we also did UFO and had abductees, and had somebody, people could call us, and we started these secret support groups originally, and they grew. So then we, made them public, and, so again, and then more people started, making them and creating them. And then one of my team members created one in Sacramento, and she does regression for abductees. And it has been so amazing to watch that when there's somewhere to go where people won't judge them and understand their story and what they've gone through. I mean, think about, as a man or a woman, the trauma that we already know, say just people being abducted and maybe raped, right? We know that those people who experience that are going to be traumatized and probably are going to need some kind of counseling or something to get through that and not let it affect their whole life. But you can find a psychiatrist to go and talk about how you were abused as a child or whatever you went through. It's a whole different story when you've been abducted and these things have happened to you. You've been impregnated. One day the child's there, the next day it's not, and nobody can give you an answer. And you go through the loss just as a woman would go through with a miscarriage. The overwhelming feeling of loss is something that is unbelievable for somebody to go through. And who do you go to? Back then, who did you go to talk to say, oh my gosh, this happened? If you told your friends, they really think you're crazy. They probably, right. I had people tell me, oh, you probably just miscarried. Probably just miscarried.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Well, I would know. Right. Believe me.
Right. So, and you know what? Post-traumatic stress is post-traumatic stress. Like with John and I talk to people all the time. People we've interviewed who've been abducted and have had these experiences suffer from post-traumatic stress disorder, and they've been diagnosed with it. And it's just like a soldier coming back from Iraq or Afghanistan who is suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder. It's the same post-traumatic stress disorder that these people are going through. Right. Whether, you're being abducted against your will, you're being, in many cases, literally raped, and you're feeling extremely vulnerable from that alone. And I mean, it's just a horrible experience. And then you can't talk to anyone about it. And we're still, we're not that great with our soldiers either. We need to be better about that. And that's what, it's like this. And that's why I always go back to this part of the human experience. What is the human experience? And whether it's war, it's, death, it's struggle, it's love, it's loss, all these things are things that we experience as human beings. And a lot of times we don't have the answers to why things are the way they are. So we really are, when you really humanize this, and which we're trying to do. And I think, it's important. That's why it's important to interview the abductees and the experiencers, because you realize when you're watching them and you're listening to them that they're human beings just like you and I. They have, they're trying to get by in the world just like you and I are. And just because something hasn't happened to me, look, I never went to war, but I empathize with soldiers who come back from war, because I know it's got to be the most horrible thing, and they suffer from post-traumatic stress disorder, and I have to respect that, honor that, and empathize with that. So just like I would with that, why wouldn't I do the same thing for someone who is coming to me and saying I had an unexplained pregnancy, and I was abducted, something happened to me, and I'm freaking out about it, and I feel like I'm losing my grip. And why wouldn't I feel the same empathy for someone like that? It's important. I think that's the message, is that these are people. We're all people. And whether we have UFO, ET experiences, abduction experiences, paranormal experiences, John and I started when we started first, kind of went down the rabbit hole, so to speak. We started with the ghost stuff because it's something that happened to me at a plantation. Long story short, John and I started to look into this stuff. We started shooting footage. We started doing research. We started doing investigations. Over the course of that time, we had experiences that we could not explain. Right. And it became the kind of thing where you realize at a certain point in time that something is going on here. Okay, we can't explain it. We may never be able to explain it. But it was, what the amazing part of that is, the whole time when we started that, we would be at an event. We used to work together a long time ago. That's how we met 25 years ago. We both worked at this marketing agency. And let's say we were at an event. John and I already started to do the paranormal stuff. And we would be at a party. And we'd be talking. And then it would come up somehow. And once people knew that John and I were doing this and we had our own experiences, all of a sudden, Mr., really keeping it close to the vest is like, when I was a kid, right, I lived in a haunted house.
Yep.
And I don't know anyone that doesn't have a ghost story. I've never met someone that didn't have some kind of story that they couldn't explain from when they were a child or a teenager. And John and I, we've had the paranormal experiences. Excuse me. We had the UFO experiences now. What's really funny, and I have to mention this, is that all the time that we were doing this, I had never seen a UFO. I had never had a ET/UFO experience until I was actually at an event with Stan Romanek. Ironically enough, and this triangular shaped craft flew right over our heads, literally. And it was not a coincidence that I was with Stan Romanek. I mean, it was crazy. And I saw this triangular shaped UFO. Don't know if it was ET or one of our, back engineered craft, if it was military or not, but still, we're not supposed to have, the triangular shaped craft that don't make any noise whatsoever. But it was funny because John, when he was a kid growing up in Connecticut, had several UFO experiences. So, yeah. It's like, we're talking, and all of a sudden one day he's like, oh yeah, I saw some daylight discs when I was a kid. I'm like, daylight discs? I'd give anything to see a daylight disc. I mean, but you realize that people as human beings, you can't be on this planet and not touch that unknown, right? Not be close to that veil, not feel the veil, touch the veil, right?
Yeah,
we're all human.
So many people are closer to it than they think. It's just they have to open their eyes just a little bit further, ask a couple of more questions, whether it's of themselves or people around them. Asking a family member if they've ever had an experience would be a starting point for a lot of people, whether it be paranormal or an experiencing a light in the sky. Chances are pretty good everybody has something that they could share. There's very few people who are, and if they do see something, they'll explain it away. And the big question that I always ask when people are quick to defend their belief system is like, well, what are you afraid of? what's the fear factor for you?
Well, it's what they've been taught, and what they see on movies and television. Everything that has anything to do with ETs is always a very horrible thing, other than Casper the Ghost, and it's a cartoon. So,
Right.
I mean, it's like everything's like making you levitate. They're taking you through the roof, they're prodding you, they're doing all this stuff, and the paranormal, same kind of thing. People are being levitated and attacked, and it's crazy. We get all of these fears, and it comes from, I mean, again, how they're being brought up. So it gets to a point where I know for me, I went to family. I was literally trying to figure out, like, okay, how come all this is going on with me? Like, it's got to be going on with somebody else. Somebody's got to be seeing the things I'm seeing. I was seeing UFOs as a young child, but I never saw it as anything negative. I never really talked about a lot of the stuff, because every time I talked about seeing and speaking to spirits, it was always, oh, ha ha ha, she's got the imaginary friend, that she'll grow out of it by the time she goes to school. Well, okay, so I went with that, and I figured, okay, by the time I go to school, they'll be gone. That never happened for me, So again, eventually you kind of stop talking about it. But as I got older, I came out, I actually got a lot of backlash from my family. Okay, because here I was coming out. I had mentioned it over the years. They thought I was crazy, Then I got into the paranormal. Then I started becoming in the public eye. Then I get a radio show and I'm talking about all of these things. And I start sharing a lot of my experiences. And when I tried to talk to now my adult siblings, because there's 9 of us, everybody, oh, no, nothing's ever happened to me, nothing. And now 10 years later, it's like a whole nother, we've gone through a whole nother shift. And now that my siblings are coming, like, yeah, like they haven't like executed me or thrown me off the air yet for talking about this. So maybe it's okay to talk. And I've had a few of my sisters, even one of my brothers, come to me and say, yeah, well, how you have some experiences. To be honest, yeah, some weird stuff has happened with me too. And then it's like, okay, now it's a whole nother story. But I mean, I'm in my 50s, and some of my siblings are, the youngest are in like their 30s. So it's like it took you all of that. And for me to finally be out in the public for so long and stick it out and still be here and not have been crucified, that now you feel like you can come to me and talk to me and share these experiences. So I've learned a lot, especially as time has gone by. And I just kind of got to the point that I was so ridiculed when I first came out. I mean, of course, in the paranormal, I was a psychic. I was titled a psychic. I never, ever claimed to be a psychic. I never told anybody. I just knew things. I would get messages. I would see people's family. I would give the message. A psychic to me growing up, I was born in the 60s. Psychic was, Miss Cleo, and she was scamming everybody. So that was the last thing was I was trying to figure out what the hell I was. Like I went to the library because there was obviously no internet. And I convinced myself for a little while as a teenager that I was a witch. And like when Charmed came on TV, I thought for sure I was a witch. I could do some hocus pocus, but none of that was what I had. So it's been an experience kind of going along. And then it was like it went on TV where you started using psychics in investigations. And then it was like the floodgates open. Like everybody's like, oh, okay, now we're good. Everybody's going to have a psychic on their group. And, people were changing their names from, so-and-so Jones to psychic medium, so-and-so Jones. Everybody was psychic. It was crazy to watch. But now, again, we're over to the next thing because we don't really have all the reality shows and stuff about UFO. We've got like Ancient Aliens. We've got a lot of like things that are about the history and different things. But I think that right now what you guys are doing and shows like I'm doing, bringing these experiences, these abductees, these stories to the forefront. They're not wanting anything from it, but it's something that when you're able to finally tell it and finally come to the point that, you know what, I just don't care if people believe me or not. This is my story. And it's something like, it's almost like if you have trauma and you go and you find a really good therapist where you can really open up and you can just put it all out there and you know that person's not going to judge you. It's that way when you get around other people who are
Mhm.
like-minded, have like,
Yeah.
the same kinds of experiences. So I love, what you guys are doing, and I'm so excited for
And
this.
we think it's important for all of those things to exist simultaneously. I think what we're filling a void that, and you're filling a void that really isn't a big part of the culture, which is sharing the individual personal stories. There's this huge hunger for more phenomena. Send me more phenomena. Give me more scientific. Give me more tangible things that I can look at, touch, and let me see the video of the latest light in the sky. Let me see the video of
Right.
that shadow creature that walked across the frame. Those are the things that most people are interested in, because it makes them in their mind realize that, wow, I needed that proof. I needed to see that thing. But we've got tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people telling their personal stories about what they've seen, what they've experienced, and that is a huge thing that we need to be listening to, because that's just as important, if not more important, than seeing something tangible. Because if all of these millions of people who've shared their stories, if they are all lying or all having psychological episodes, so be it. But if they're all sharing something that becomes part of the public consciousness, collectively part of our existence, because it advances thought forward, we all gain from that. So it's not something to walk away from. It's not something to ridicule. It's something to, walk into,
Yeah.
experience it, ask those questions, and get in front of people that make you feel uncomfortable, and ask them what their personal experience was. That's one thing that I encourage anybody who like you mentioned to William earlier, if you're a little bit skeptical about this, is I encourage anybody who has ever thought negatively or knee jerked to something that they saw on a video clip, or a photograph that they saw, or an audio clip that they heard. Most of the time, especially in today's day and age, we're getting our information in short bursts and sound bites and visual messages that are just not really substantial, because you don't know the context of where it's coming from. You don't know the whole story behind it. So the big thing that we think is important is that, okay, sure, you saw an hour and 45-minute movie, and it featured 15 different people talking about this from both a researcher perspective as well as an experiencer perspective. But now go and do the deeper dive research. Learn a little bit more, ask more questions, get in front of somebody who's an experiencer and ask them to tell their story. Spend more than 5 minutes with them, spend a day with them, spend a week with that person, spending time with them. That's one of the things that we've had the luxury of doing in making these films, is sitting down with people for extended periods of time and getting to see their range of emotions that they go through as a result of what has happened to them. And the biggest thing that we hear over and over again is this sounds crazy, doesn't it? It just sounds ridiculous, because it doesn't fit in with anything else that we had been led to believe. And most of these people would say that up until they had their aha moment, they were just like everybody else. They were open. Some people might have been open to it, but they may not have embraced it. And it wasn't until they were in the experience that they realize that, okay, this is really happening. So I think that, a big part of what we're trying to do is to encourage people to spend more time with this information, not just see a movie, be entertained, and walk away, or to have a few questions posed that you never thought about before and go, and then you just don't think about it.
Cool. Looks like John froze.
In the films, for them to have the opportunity to spend more time with it, spend more time with the information, ask more questions, do the research on your own time. And you had mentioned earlier about the whole idea behind proof, and that so many people are looking for that proof. What we want people to do is just to get comfortable with asking questions about what they don't know. And getting comfortable with the fact that, I might be experiencing something that makes more sense to me than I realize, but I just haven't been exposed to it in a way where it resonates with me. And all it's going to take for most people is when they find somebody that is in their life that's had an experience, and they sit down and spend the time to truly understand what that person's been through. And I would guarantee you, most of the people that are listening to this show tonight, whether they know it or not, they know somebody who has been through an abduction experience before. And if they were to learn a little bit more about it, it might open their minds in a way that they've never been open before. But I also think at the same time, the people who walk away from this or turn away or don't even want to have a discussion or immediately quash it, there's a fear-based element to it, is that I don't want to find something out that makes me uncomfortable with what I currently believe. Not fear from a scary, but fear from if you share something with me that upsets my apple cart, then I've got to figure new things out. And some people just don't want to do that.
Well, that's true. And also, our human nature is to fear what we don't understand. So that's a big thing about educating people and giving the information out there, because again, once you understand things, it changes your perception, of what's going on, and this could be possible. When you were also vetting for this movie, I know my personal interviews with abductees and contactees, some of them claim to be basically abducted and pretty much raped and inseminated with a child, with a hybrid child. But I also have had guests on the show and people I've spoke to who have been more agreeable, like they've been told this is what they are, supposed to do, and they just kind of go along with it, and they have the same outcome of where they're going to have a child, and that child is going to be then removed from them, but they don't come with the trauma because they've agreed to it, opposed to it being done against their will. Did you find anybody that contacted you that had an experience like that?
Yeah, we did. There were a couple of people, and there was someone that we wanted to have in the film because her experience was very positive one to her. In her paradigm, I think people have to cope with having an experience. They cope with it in different ways. But I think it is a healthy way to look at something is, you know what, her whole thing was that I agreed to this before I was even born.
Right.
And we're getting esoteric, but before I agreed that I was going to do this. So I'm cool with it. And whatever they need to do, they need to do. And I'm part of something that in the end is going to help humanity. And that's part of the ascension kind of paradigm that John was talking about before. It's all love and light. It's all good. Now, interestingly enough, at the UFO Congress in Phoenix, I ran into the reason why she wasn't in the film was because at the time she wasn't traveling at all. And she lived in a place that just made it very difficult for us because we had a budget and we filmed people at certain locations and we just couldn't make it to where she was. But she was one of the people we really wanted to talk to. Well, she had a great story, incredible story. And she was very credible, the whole 9 yards, but she just was very positive about it. And I ran into her at the UFO Congress, and we screened the film. The film was obviously being screened there. And I remember sitting there, and there was a good crowd in the audience, and I saw her. And I go, oh my God, there she is. And I told Lori, I was with Lori Wagner, one of our other producers, and John couldn't be there because he was in Peru. But I was like, she's there. Look, she's watching it. And I saw her pacing back and forth. So she seemed very uncomfortable. It must have been, I was thinking to myself, must have been hard, certainly watching this for people who were abductees, because it does trigger a lot. So I said, I got to talk to her. So afterwards I went up to her and I said, hey, it's me. Remember, blah, blah, blah. I was like, yeah. I'm like, so what'd you think? And she's like, well, I loved the film. It was really well done. I'm really glad you did it. But I wish that it would have been a little more positive. And
Right.
and I said, well, I said, look, totally understand, but you have to understand all the people we spoke to, for the most part, were horrified by the
Right.
experiences they had. It takes a special person to go through that and be like, I'm good. Thank you for
Right.
using me in that manner.
Right.
And,
Against
and
the will.
I guess you're right, but again, well, I agree to it. And it's a karmic thing. It's very karmic. It's very soul level stuff. And you have to respect that. But you know what? I have to say, John, I think of most of the people we've run into, they've,
Yeah.
at least at the beginning, struggle mightily with what's happening to them.
Yeah, and my take on that is that there are a lot of people out there who are saying that this is positive too. Why did you focus on the negative? We've heard that on numerous occasions from people, specifically in the ascension belief paradigm. And it's no different than having, spiritual and non-spiritual people having arguments and political parties having arguments. It's just, it doesn't come from my belief perspective. Therefore, I don't feel comfortable, or it made me, I wish it was a little bit more like what I believed. And the fact of the matter is that while the ascension people and the people who have had positive experiences, I would ask them all to go back to the very first time that you were aware that you were going through something, and did you connect to that agreement? Were you aware of that agreement?
Right.
And chances are pretty good, unless you came to this earth as a hybrid and you knew your mission from the day that you got here. You probably were a little bit frightened by what you were finding out. It isn't until you connect to the information about what happened to you that you start to realize, like, oh, okay, so I can go and do that connection to my star connection, to the different race that I'm connected with. And therefore I've had these regressions, or I've had these meditative processes that I've gone through where I realize what my connection is to all of this. And I understand now that I made the commitment, I made I signed the contract to come back and be this on this planet at this time. So not everybody, and there are a couple of people, like, most of the people that have been interviewed by the free report, only 7% of them have had negative experiences. To me, my response to that would be like, well, wow, that's pretty unusual, because everybody that we've talked to, and we've talked to over the course of the last 8, 9 years, 10 years, we've talked to hundreds of people, and not a single one of them has said to us, oh, from day one I thought it was fantastic. So most of the people have adjusted to it. All of the people in the film have adjusted to it. They don't completely understand all the details. You have somebody like Rob who's still struggling with the immensity and the enormity of what he was exposed to, the information that he learned, and now he feels insignificant on this planet and feels like he's better off elsewhere. So he struggles with it from that point of view. April had a connection that allowed her to have a child, even though her abduction experiences were horrific. She sees it as, well, the outcome was that I had a child. So therefore I feel grateful that I had the experience that I had, no matter, the raping part of it. Yeah, I'm okay with that, because I wound up, an intervention that allowed me to keep a child. Think about that for a second, that somebody can still come out from a positive perspective with this information. Still has, strange things happen that freak her out from time to time. But overall, she's saying, I'm okay with what's happened with me because of what I got from it. And then you have somebody like Geraldine, whose life was completely turned upside down. She went from being a very successful career businesswoman, 6 figures a year. She was engaged to be married. She had a regression in January of 2017. After that regression, she went home and broke off her relationship. A month later, she had her second regression. And she decided that she was going to quit her career, and she was going to focus her energy on helping other people who have been through something like her. She had a switch that was flipped. She got connected to the electromagnetic field. She has the ability to do readings, remote readings now, something that she knew nothing about before she had that regression. Something happened that changed everything for her. So you look at these 3 different people who have all had pretty horrific experiences based on what they were exposed to. but now are each addressing it in a very different way because enough time has gone by. And we're not talking about 20, 30 years of dealing with it. Geraldine's started with her in 2013 when she had her first experience where she started to connect to her past. Rob had his in 2009, and April's was only 3 or 4 years ago. So these were all relatively new stories that they're coming to grips with, that they've understood what their journey is as a result of what they've been through. But I'll go back to the responses that we're getting from people. And we've released a trailer or a teaser about the film targeted to female audiences about a month ago. And the response to that has been unbelievable. And what's unbelievable about it is that so many women that have seen it have shared it with people.
Right.
It's been viewed more than the trailer that the traditional trailer that went out for the film. And most of the women are saying, you've got to see this. And a lot of people are saying, wow, something happened to me. And this one stream of all the people who are participating in the dialogue, the engagement on this has been sharing their stories. And it's phenomenal. And one woman even shared it a couple of weeks ago saying, I'm not like tuned into this genre, but when this hit my feed and I watched it and then I started reading all of the comments, I was blown away by how many women are saying this has happened to them.
Yeah.
And she said, I feel compelled that I need to share this as a result of the fact that there's so many people who saw this, 2-minute, 90-second, 2-minute trailer and responded to it saying something like this happened to me too. So when you start to see something like getting a response like that, you have to, I think it is intelligent and responsible way to look at that and I use responsible in the sense of to yourself, responsible to say, let me explore this, let me find out a little bit more, let me crash the party about something that I might not be familiar with because I'm going to learn something. And then the same way people can flip it around and say like, okay, well, I believe in the religious paradigm, dive into that, learn a little bit more about that. Because at the end of the day, you have the people who are believing in ascension that are convinced that anybody that doesn't believe that is an idiot. And you have the people in the other two camps, Dr. Jacobs, when we first talked to him on the phone 2 years ago, well, we wanted him to be in the second film, but he was unavailable due to a prior commitment, another project. He said, well, what is this film about? And we told him, and he's like, well, you can stop right there. The end game is colonization. Done. Story's over. There's nothing else that you need to talk about. And he said, and he goes, and I may sound, conceited and pompous. He says, but I've done the research. I know the outcome. Everybody else is wrong. I'm right. So he's convicted in what he believes. Mm-hmm. You have the ascension people convicted in what they believe. You have the religious paradigm people believing what they believe, and everybody else is wrong. So the fact is that we don't know. We don't know the answer yet. They could be all right. And there may be 5 other paradigms that we're not aware of.
But, and also too, when we look at these things and we, Christina, that because when you brought it up, people get heated.
Yeah.
When they talk about positive versus negative versus biblical. So you throw all 3 in. Mm-hmm. We've been on a couple of shows where you could see the people like, well, it's all about the Bible. These guys don't know what they're talking about. And we're like, well, we're not talking about it. We're not saying anything one way or the other, but that's your belief, but that's your deal. Right. But here's the problem when it comes down to whether it's good, bad, biblical, this or that, as in most things, with most things that we experience in life, there's always there's shades of gray, right? So, and we've had these incredible discussions about this because think about the way human beings, the way we look at things. If I took all the people we spoke to and I looked at this objectively, the problem that I have with it, when I was young growing up, I had a very positive attitude towards ETs and that connection, and that someday we were going to be cosmic citizens and we were all going to be part of this galactic federation and like the whole idea of Star Trek, which I grew up with. Right. I still truly believe that. But after doing all this research as a human being, I can't help but come to the conclusion, especially when it comes to abductions, that these are crimes against humanity. Think about the actual thing that's happening to people. They're not asking to be abducted. They're
Right.
being taken against their will. They're being experimented on. They're being traumatized. This is like what the Nazis did, right? So it's like it's a war. It's, well, not a war crime, but it's a crime against humanity.
Right.
So, and I said that, I remember one of the first times I mentioned it to John, and we were talking about it, and we realized it's like, okay, but wait a minute. It's a crime against humanity based on our paradigm of what we believe is morally right and wrong. Okay. But we don't know. We have no clue how ETs think and why they think that way. So we have no understanding of why an ET might think that what they're doing is totally awesome for us and that there is no moral dilemma whatsoever. They might not even have morality. Morality might not be a thing for them.
Right.
They might be so scientific and black and white that they're coming, they're robotic. We're doing what we need to do. We're doing it for our reasons. Everyone has their motives. Everyone has their agendas. This is the reality of probably living species all over the universe. I mean, everyone has their good and bad. No one's perfect. So how do we even take that and say, well, these are crimes against humanity? That's what I'm screaming, right? I'm screaming that right now. This is ridiculous. Someone's going to have to pay for this. If there's ever disclosure and this comes out, someone's going to have to answer for this, because you cannot do this. And if the government knew about it, and if the government was in cahoots where they said, okay, look, we'll make a deal. You give us some technology, you can abduct our people. I could absolutely see them doing that. I mean, that's not a stretch. You know, I don't know if that's for sure, but absolutely the government would do something like that. But if that's the case, well, hey, someone's got to answer for this. This is not the way we can. This is not part of our morality. This is wrong. But again, how do we think three-dimensionally? What if these ETs are ninth dimensional beings? I don't even know what that means, but I've been told, you know, there's the fifth, the sixth, the ninth dimension. I'm like, I don't know what that means. Right. So how do we come to terms with that? How do we say it's good, it's bad, or it's biblical? You know, the biblical is kind of the easy way out. It's like, well, it says in the Bible this, so boom. You know, it's always got kind of like the easy way to kind of explain everything away.
Hey, and I was bad because, you know, people who can, you know, see and foretell things are bad people. It was nothing godly, you know. And then you got other people who believe that now that they're chosen by God to have these premonitions and receive this information. So it's very interesting. I mean, again, I think that for just as many answers that we think we gain, there are 100 more questions that pop up. And for any of us, as we said, who have experienced paranormal, you know, UFO, abduction, any of that, I don't think we are ever going to know all of the answers. But I'm glad that I'm in good company, that, you know, we're all out there trying to, you know, get as much of the information that we can out to people. We're running out of time right now. I do want to let people know, where can they watch the film if they want to?
It's available right now on streaming platforms and most of the digital purchase platforms. So it's not available for free anywhere. And I use the word free lightly because most people assume that, you know, Netflix is free and Amazon Prime is free. It's like, well, no, you're actually paying for that. So it's not necessarily free. But it is available on digital platforms right now, pay-per-view platforms. So the best place to find out what platforms it's available on is to go to the film's website, which is extraordinarytheseating.com. It has the trailer on there. It has the awards that the film has won. It has brief little reviews from some people who have seen the film, influencers within the ufology world. And it also has the different platforms that it's available on. All you have to do is click on the icons and it'll take you to that platform. It's available at the low end for $3.99 for pay-per-view. And if people want to buy it and own it, it's available, I think, from $8.99 up to $12.99. So it is available. We hope that it's going to be available on other platforms in the future. You know, that's all left up to our distributor. Make sure that it finds the widest audience possible. Ultimately, that is our mantra, is to find a wide audience. And you know, people have asked us from time to time, you know, why isn't it free? Well, it costs money to make a film.
That's right.
And we need to pay back the loans that we've taken out from different individuals who've supported our efforts. So we're really appreciative of people who are willing to step up and help get these things done. So for people who want to follow along on the journey with us, we can be found on Facebook. That's where we engage the most. Facebook.com/J3Films is the J3 Films Facebook page, and specifically to the film where we have the most engagement on this Extraordinary the Seating is on the Facebook page, Facebook.com/EX2, the number 2, the seating. So EX2 the seating. So Facebook.com/EX2 the seating, and we engage quite a bit through Facebook.
Everybody can also go to the bottom of the promo. I've also put the link to the preview. I'll tell you, take a look at it, because if you look at the preview, I'm telling you, once I saw the actual movie, I was even so more impressed. I mean, that was a great preview to really reel people in, just enough of it to just really pique the interest to really want to hear the rest. And you guys did a great job. I cannot wait for the third part of this trilogy. I hope again that you guys will come back on the show to talk about that when it's coming out as well. And I always wish you lots of success, and we will be talking here soon again. And I know I'm getting a bunch of direct messages from Twitter, and some people got here late. If you got here late, make sure to join me on Thursday night, and I'm going to have my 2 guests. They're going to be back on again. We're going to be talking about this same topic, but I'm going to have a whole lot of more questions. So for any of you out there that have see this and you have questions and you would like to get me to answer questions for the guys for Thursday night, go ahead and comment below or private message me. I will make sure that I write them all down, and we will use them for the show on Thursday. I personally have all kinds of questions I still, want to ask, and things to discuss. So I look forward to having you guys back on Thursday night.
Thank you so much for having us tonight. We really appreciate it. Always a pleasure.
Absolutely. All right. We will see you back on Top Secret News Thursday night, same time, same channel. So, all right. I will see you both then. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, guys. So now going from one filmmaker to my next guest, who is waiting patiently in the lobby. So hold on, let me bring him on.
Hey,
Matt. How you doing, Matt?
I was waiting. I'm good. How are you?
I am good. We have a much better connection than we had last week, or last time. So I'm so glad that you're in a nice place that has good Wi-Fi.
I'm glad you can hear me and see me this time. I'm at a Starbucks.
Yeah,
so yeah, thank you for having me on Paranormal Connections. I really appreciate all the shout outs for Shockfest that you've been doing. Yeah, Shockfest, guys. Let's get right to it. November 22nd to 24th in Vegas. We'll be having Christina George join us at Shock anniversary. And I've got some updates for all of you. Christina, just off the bat, we have an announcement to make, and that announcement is tickets. General admission tickets are $20. So now's the time to get it.
$20?
That's correct. $20 for the weekend. You get to see.
Wow.
We're going to be screening movies.
Check it out. Hold on just a second. If you guys have went, because I remember, everybody remembered I brought, Matt and Gil on. They've been on the show multiple times. Matt's been on plenty of times. And kind of since they started promoting this, I had him on the show and talked about this. And originally, when it first started out at the early bird special, before they even started right at the very beginning of selling tickets last year, they had them for $20. And so for them now, it's like $99 for to get in for, and this covers still 3 days. So still, even if it was $99, that's a great deal. And then there have been deals that they get given for 40% off or 50% off. But this $20, guys, for everybody that I have seen at all of these events that have been saying, well, I really want to go, but, it's going to cost a lot, and then go to Vegas and everything. Okay, you have no excuses now. $20, that's nothing. Like, get your tickets. It's going to get you in all 3 days. Vegas is cheap to fly to. Vegas is cheap to stay at. I mean, come on. This is something that I have been talking about since the beginning. And again, we do not get events like this. This is not going to be your normal paranormal event. That's what I love about this. You know, I have certain people's events that I promote, but this one has me so excited. And just the way that it's being put together, the way that you guys are presenting, you know, the evidence for presenters, everything that you're doing about this just is heartwarming. So thank you for even letting me be part of this.
Thank you so much, Christina. But that's not it. There's more. There's so much more to share. I'm excited to share it with you. So just want to come. If you just want to be at the hotel with us, we're at a haunted hotel in Las Vegas. We're going to be screening horror movies. We have a red carpet. There's going to be a award ceremony, panels. Christina, you're going to be there for that. $20. Just come.
What?
Now, if you want to come and get a paranormal investigator all access pass, which comes with a drink ticket, by the way, it also gives you access to the after party with limo service. So you can drive in a limo to the after party.
What?
And a special thing that I'm going to call a Death Defier's Clue, which I'll explain what that is in a second. But that is our paranormal investigator package for the weekend. That's another $20. That's $49. That's for the whole weekend. You get the limo service, you get a drink ticket to the Terror Tales Tavern, and the Death Defier's Clue. Now, here's the thing. The Death Defier's Clue is really interesting because it's part of the secret organization that is going to be making a presence at Shockfest. And if you find all the clues, you very well may win a prize, and a really exciting one, too, which I'm going to tell you about on Christina's show. But that's the Paranormal Access Pass. So just show up, $20. If you want to really be part of the show and come to the after party, get the limo service, get a drink on us, $49. If you want the VIP experience, now you get 2 drink tickets. On top of that, you get the interactive tour hotel. You get to be taken all throughout the hotel. You get to experience a really unique opportunity that nobody gets to know about. It's a secret history of the hotel. Early check-in. That is now $99, which was the price of the original general admission price back in the day.
Wow.
Finally, well, not quite finally, there's more. If you want a room at the hotel, you want to spend a night, not only one night, but 2 nights and 3 days at this haunted hotel in Vegas, and it's a legit haunted hotel, you get 2 of the access passes, which comes with 2 dinner buffets, 1 per person. So we'll feed you. We'll give you 2 drink tickets each, so that's 2 drink tickets a person, 1 buffet a person, plus a room that you guys get to share, plus the VIP all access. That's $660. But there's more. For Christina's audience, Paranormal Connections radio show, for only 10 people who use this code, everything across the board is half off. So if you want a room with the buffet, with the drink tickets, with the after party, with the limo, now's the time to get it for $333. And that's it. But there's only 10, so you're going to run out, and it's not going to last long. It ends after Halloween. So use the code CONNECTIONS now, and you can spend the weekend with us at the Hotel Paranormal. And Christina, I'm going to give you this flyer so you can actually get a digital copy of this. And you can share it.
All right. That, oh my God, that is so amazing. That is more than I can even imagine. I knew that we were going to give some, special things away. I had no idea it was going to be all this. So this is amazing because a lot of people were saying, oh man, I so wish that I could be able to get a room in the hotel. Because a lot of times at the events, that's the problem. So they rent out the whole hotel or whatever. Like we had the Biltmores out in Lake Tahoe. And so we had the whole thing packed to capacity with paranormal investigators. And then everybody was going to investigate the hotel at, the end of the night. it was so hard because you had people who were trying to go to sleep. They had people who were trying to investigate. You had people going up and down the room. So people are used to staying where the events are at. So a lot of people were saying, oh, so will you be able to stay at the hotel? And so for all those people who have been asking me, yes, you can, but only 10 of you can. So,
Yep.
you know, get your tickets now. I mean, $333. You would pay that staying pretty much anywhere in Vegas. Plus you get so much more. So with all of that, so, you know, food and drinks and, you know, the after party and, you know, I mean, believe me, these guys got a lot of stuff planned. I have to say, you, between you and Gil, you do have some great ideas. There's definitely a lot involved in this event, not just paranormal, not just the horror genre. It's both of them together, and I am so excited for this. You have no idea.
We're super excited to have you. On top of that, John Zaffis is going to be with us, so he'll be in attendance. And it's and the 666 special is open as long as rooms are open, but only 10 will be able to use this code. And it's only going to be available for, gosh, until Halloween. Now's the time to use it.
Wow.
And the hotel's haunted, and it's ghost hunter and paranormal investigator friendly. I encourage you to bring equipment, take some time and get to know the hotel. Check out the 3rd floor. That's where the most activity takes place. And Saturday night, we're going to be doing a spirit summoning ritual in the hotel with the practicing occultist. I do this like yearly. They're doing it with us. It's the Crooked Path Apothecary in Burbank. They're going to be summoning the spirits in the hotel. They want you investigators to come and bring your equipment and try to capture some evidence. So now's the time. This is it.
Well, I have to say, I mean, I went there for the very first time. I went to Vegas about 5-6 years ago for my birthday. I went with a bunch of my teammates. My son and his girlfriend flew out. Everybody came to celebrate with me. And we booked, well, I didn't. One of my teammates, Mike, said, oh, I've booked us a room at a haunted hotel. And of course, Christina's like, what, in Vegas? Like, he couldn't have gave me a better birthday present. So I was like, let's go. And when we got there early. There was like nobody there, and you could walk in. It has like this gothic feel to it. It's got, you know, pictures up on the ceiling, and yeah, it's a creepy like place, but it's got a real interesting vibe. So when I went in there, I was picking stuff up, and I'm like, oh man, this is going to be awesome. We get up to the room, we go and we get some. Yeah, there you go. It's amazing. Yeah, and you guys can go online and look up the Artisan Hotel in Las Vegas, Nevada, and you can see the pictures of this location. It is phenomenal. And they've got secret rooms, they've got a chapel, they've got all kinds of stuff. I mean, there is a lot of activity that I was picking up just walking into the bar area, which was very interesting. And when we went up to our room, because we were up, I think, like on the 3rd or 4th floor. And so I was looking forward to being able to investigate at night. And for the whole 5 nights that we were there, what Mike didn't do when he did his research and to find out about this haunted hotel was that it was also the biggest 24-hour party hotel that they had in Vegas. So we literally had drunk, naked people running up and down the hallway, banging on the doors, telling us to come out and party with them. There was no way you could get any kind of evidence. So the fact that you guys have completely took control of this hotel and will have, you know, access to it, and people will be able to investigate. This is like virgin territory. And this is something else that drew me to your event. Was it was something completely different at a location that nobody else has done. I mean, it's like, you know, the virgin, you know, popping of the cherry of the paranormal. It's like, you know, when you get to be the first people to go in there and actually be able to get some evidence. That's amazing, because everybody goes to the same places that are known to be haunted. So this, you know, your event might put this hotel on the map when people go to Vegas for the paranormal, you know, people.
And it's not publicly advertised as haunted. Right. We had to go to the original owners, or at least the previous owners, and they gave us a bit of a spiel on what it was like working at this hotel when it was their property. And apparently the employees were very deathly afraid of the third floor.
Yes.
Yeah, it's decorated just like the Haunted Mansion or like Clue. That's the setting.
Yeah.
And there are secret rooms. There is a pool area. There are haunted spaces in the hotel. And like I said, we'll be summoning some spirits that occupy the building today. And we do have total control. Like what you said earlier, there won't be any stragglers who are out partying too wildly, unless they're, of course, in our camp, which
could happen.
Well, I don't think so. I mean, the type of people. This is a very paranormal investigator friendly environment. We want to make sure that people really get the opportunity to capture whatever they can at this space. So
yeah, but then there's the other side of us that any reason to get together and drink and have a great time. Yeah, it gets.
This is the place. And I gotta say, Friday is going to be a ball. We're really looking forward to having you guys here. Christina, as always, thank you so much for promoting us, and we're really grateful to have you show up at the event too. We're really looking forward to having you join us.
Absolutely. I will be streaming live throughout the event, covering a lot of the different things that we'll be doing there. It's going to be different than you've ever seen at any of the other events. So everybody who's used to the same old speakers, the same old lectures, the same old faces, this is going to be completely different. And again, in Vegas, and a whole lot of fun things to do at the same time. It's not just the paranormal. So make sure to get online. I'm going to post up a promo for this. Matt, if you can send me a digital copy of the flyer, then I will put it up. Everybody, again, go to the site, put in connections so that you can get your tickets for $20. If you want the additional stuff, another $20. Oh my gosh, like $99. Get one of them, because no matter which way you go, for what you're going to get, any of those prices, you're not going to see them at any of the other events. And for everybody who's been bitching at me saying, oh my gosh, it's expensive, and then we got to pay for Vegas, now you have no excuses. I don't want to hear it. You better go and buy those. Use my code.
At the Hotel Paranormal, now's the time. This is going to be a very specific code, and it's for Christina, and we're really happy to share it. And we really look forward to having you guys join us. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Yep. Make sure to come out and see me. I'll have a booth there. I will be streaming live, all kinds of fun stuff to do. And I'm going to be up in all of the shenanigans as I usually am. So I cannot wait. It's the do-over of Vegas.
This is going to be fun. And like I said, I'll say it again, we got John Zaffis coming. He's going to be at the event this over the weekend as well, November 22nd to 24th.
Question: are you still taking submissions for paranormal evidence?
Gosh, we've been doing that all year, and we've had a lot of evidence come in. At this point, is capped.
Okay.
Is there something you had in mind? I mean, I might be able to squeeze maybe one person into review, but at this point, it's pretty capped.
Yeah, I have one person, and I'll talk to you after. It's somebody that I introduced you to. Bro, we were up at Arizona, so I definitely
let's take a look at it. If they have a full body apparition, I mean, what can I say?
Right. It was really a lot of fun to see you. Up in Arizona as well. Matt joined. Yeah, up at Vulcan City Paracon. What a lot of fun! I can't wait to go back next year. I'm already preparing and getting it together. And a lot of people, were really enjoying your lecture, and more so even loving what you guys are doing. And I so wish that Gil could have made it. And I mean, again, Gil's a new daddy, and he's got a lot of, personal things he's got to do. And he's kind of spearheading between the two of them. Matt running all over the country. And, I think last time when we had him, Gil was going to be on, or no, when we were at the event, and Gil had to be at the opening of the Queen Mary event. So he couldn't make it. But I mean, there's so much business part of this behind the scenes that nobody gets to see. And I've been involved in a lot of events, so I know all the things that go behind. But you guys are doing a great job to get this all put together.
I appreciate that. And when you say business, you mean taking care of my goddaughter. He's doing a good job raising that kid, and I look forward to seeing her when I get back to California.
He's an awesome dad. I swear, every time I see you, it's like,
job, man.
Yes, absolutely. All right, Matt. Well, Matt will be back again next week on Monday, all the way up into just about when it's time to be at the event. So we're going to still be talking about it, and we'll be announcing things every week of different things that are going to be going on. There's so much, as I said, there's so much that's going to happen at this thing. They just don't want to let it all out. There's a lot of surprises, twists and turns. So stay tuned to the show so that you have all of the latest updated information, and make sure to go ahead and give them the website of where they should go to get their tickets at, Matt.
Right. You want to go to Shock Film Fest. That's SHOCKFILMFEST. Let's see if I can. It's right there. That's
Perfect.
where you want to go.
All right.
Shock Film Fest is where you'll get your tickets.
All right.
And use the code CONNECTIONS right here for 50% off.
That is right. Connections. Make sure you put it in and get those tickets. I am so excited to be there. And as I said, I will go ahead and put up a promo with that flyer so that everybody can see it, know where to go. But get them, because the tickets are going to go fast, people. And if you don't get a ticket, you
already have them.
I bet. And as I said,
this is the last opportunity to really get a room. I highly recommend it now, and this is the best way to do it, through Christina George's show, Paranormal Connections.
Well, again, thank you so much for giving such a huge discount, for the listeners. I know they're going to love this, because like I said, people have really been bugging me for the last couple of months. So for everybody that has been bugging me, I'm going to be emailing you that flyer. So make sure you go and get your tickets, because I don't want to hear anything else about you can't get there. So there's no
thank you so much for having me. This has been really cool. It's always good to see you.
Of course. And I will have you back next week, and we'll get some more information.
Awesome. I look forward to it. Thank you very much.
See you soon. All right, guys, we are out of time, and thank you so much for spending the last 2 hours with me. I am so excited to be back again on Thursday. And again, I've got some great shows lined up, some great guests, some great stories. I mean, it's going to be a lot of fun. All right, guys, I will see you on Thursday night for Top Secret News to have part 2 of the Extraordinary, the seeding this Thursday. So 6 o'clock, same time, same place. See y'all then. Good night.